The Downtown to Uptown Challenge is on! Welcome to Downtown to Uptown, all you designers. You've got 30 minutes starting now to pick your materials from downstairs and remainders. You will have 6 hours to create your upcycled garment from start to finish. You've got to be done by 4 o'clock and ready for hair and makeup at Elite Beauty Bar. And then the fashion show starts at 6 p.m. where you will show it all off. Get ready, let's go.
My mom was a seamstress. My oldest sister was a seamstress. So they both taught me how to sew, generally speaking, when I was a kid. And I just legit hated it. I thought it was so boring because it was you grab a pattern, you grab the fabric, you follow the pattern, you make the final product, and it looks like the thing on the pattern, and I was so bored. But I drew a lot in high school. I was getting more into costume design, and when I went to college for musical theater, thought that's what I was gonna do. I was like the only person in the whole theater department who knew how to sew, so they were glad to push me into the costume shop and have me work on costumes for 4 years. But by the time I graduated, I was bored again, so kind of dropped off, didn't sew again for a long time. And it wasn't until years later, after doing a bunch of other stuff, that I was like, I kind of want to sew again. I kind of want to try that. But it felt very hard to get back into it, going from no supplies. I didn't have a big budget at the time, and I was so afraid that I would just buy this expensive fabric and then mess up and waste all of it, and then feel guilty about wasting it and feel bad that I messed it up. And I was like, let's just avoid it.
Downtown to Uptown Challengers, 20 minutes left. 20 minutes, not 1 minute sooner.
It wasn't until I saw somewhere, someone was like, oh, I went to Goodwill and I just bought a bunch of sheets for really, really cheap at Goodwill, and I made stuff out of them. I could just go get secondhand leftover materials and I can start sewing with that. Shortly after that, actually, my sister, who does not live in LA, told me about remainders, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? A whole store of just the fabric and the supplies for secondhand prices? And that's when I started hearing more about fast fashion and how much textile is being wasted every single year. And I was like, wait, all of that fabric that's at the regular fabric store for so expensive, even on sale, it's more expensive than here. When people don't buy it, it just gets dumped. It was refreshing to be able to remove myself from that and start something different for me and start using secondhand fabrics that there's no reason to get rid of them. There's no reason that these should be thrown away. There is definitely a pretty big movement into the upcycling, recycling, reusing. I have seen over the last couple years that is taking traction and it's getting bigger, which is amazing to see. There's not only a lot more small brands in the fashion industry that are focusing on sustainability, that are being very open about how they construct their clothing, how they pay their workers, where they get their materials from. But there's also just a lot of makers and designers and people who aren't even a business. I'm not a business, I'm not selling clothes, I'm just making them for myself. But there's a lot more of these single people who are either taking thrifted clothing and upcycling it to be better for them, more stylish for them, something they'll want to wear longer, or who are starting to sew from secondhand materials.
After the garment's made, we need them to get down to Elite Beauty Bar, get in hair and makeup, and get that garment ready to walk the runway. Some of them brought their own models, some of them are modeling it themselves. It's just got to be ready to go by 6 o'clock when the fashion show starts.
Or just sewing in general, sewing your own garments in general is already a huge pushback against fast fashion, because as soon as you start to sew something yourself, you have such a higher level of appreciation for what goes into that garment. And I'm not gonna sew something and then love it 1 second and dump it the next. I put my time and my effort into that, so I'm gonna keep it and I'm gonna wear it until it falls apart. Again, fabric is expensive, and most people want to use secondhand materials. The desire for that is huge. A lot of people just don't have access for it. I think the trend would like explode upward if people had more access to secondhand fabrics, and if less of them were going in landfills and more of them were going to stores. The fabric that is going into landfills takes an insane amount of time to decompose. And I think people don't realize this because yes, some fabrics are faster, especially the natural fibers, cotton, linen, silk, wool, stuff like that. But that's no longer the bulk of the fabric we're using. The bulk of the fabric that is being used nowadays is polyester or some form of that has plastic in it. And that can take up to or even past 200 years to decompose. So you can't just be like, oh, cotton decomposes in like 2 years. It's okay. No, cotton is a small percentage of what's being thrown in these landfills. And it's something like 92 million tons right now that are going in landfills yearly of textiles, garments, and fabric that's just being dumped.
3, Megan, 2, 1. Except Megan is not done yet. Great job, you guys. Okay, I'll see you over at Leigh.
I would really recommend to new designers, whether you're just making something for yourself or you're making a small batch of things to sell, whichever road you're on, there are secondhand options for you, and it's not limited. You can make stuff out of very small amounts of fabric to start with. This entire dress is made out of what we call remnants, which is generally 3 or 4 yards at most. Sometimes they're just half a yard. When you start mixing those together, you can make incredible garments out of that. And those are remnants that most people would just automatically dump just because they're too small. And if you don't have a remainders within driving distance, look online. There are resources out there. You might have to pay a little bit of shipping, but that is better than paying the high prices for the new fabric. And if you're trying to design larger quantities, if you're trying to start a small business for clothing, there are also options. That would be like dead stock. You'd take the fabric that businesses are going to dump in a landfill, and that's now being sold for cheaper, or in some places even being donated if you're really lucky. But then you can get massive rolls of fabric if you need to make multiple garments. A big amount of one type of fabric is available to you, not brand new, not wholesale, but dead stock, secondhand, stuff that would have been dumped, and you can rescue that.
And Kimberly, thank you so much. This has been so much fun put together. And today I was there all day with the designers while they were making these gorgeous, amazing creations. So with that, I think, shall we start the show?
Yay.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Hard to explain how you go from the flat pieces to the final garment because half the time you have no idea what you're doing. But you just start putting seams together that need to be together. And if you're lucky, it'll turn out like you originally wanted it. If you're even luckier, it'll turn out different, but you'll like it better, which is quite often what happens.